woman stops valuing you the moment she believes your presence is guaranteed. When she starts to think that no matter how she acts, you'll always be there, chasing, explaining, forgiving, and holding on, she slowly loses respect for what she once admired. It's not the arguments, the distance, or even the silence that break her sense of value. It's the illusion that you'll never walk away. That illusion feeds her ego and blinds her to reality. She begins to see your patience as weakness, your understanding as neediness, and your love as something she can control. You, who once stood tall with confidence, become predictable in her eyes. A man whose emotions she can trigger, whose loyalty she can test, and whose heart she assumes will never leave her hand. But what she doesn't realize is that every time she takes you for granted, something inside you begins to change quietly. At first, you try harder. You speak with softer tones, hoping she'll notice the sincerity behind your words. You try to prove your worth, believing effort will awaken her appreciation, but it never does. The more you give, the less she feels the need to give back. It's a cruel paradox. The more consistent you become, the less curiosity she feels. She no longer wonders what losing you might mean because she assumes she never will. The fire that once sparked connection now turns into the dull warmth of routine. She begins to believe she owns your loyalty, and that's when the value dies. But the truth about human connection is simple. What is taken for granted eventually fades away, and when you finally stop explaining, when you stop proving, when you stop fighting to be seen, something unexpected happens. She feels a shift. The energy that once centered around her suddenly turns inward toward your own peace. You no longer react to her silence or chase her attention. You become calm, distant, focused, and that calm terrifies her more than your anger ever did. Because anger still means you care, silence means you've accepted the truth. And when a man accepts the truth, he becomes free. That's when it begins to hurt her. Not when you argue, not when you plead, but when you simply stop. When you stop showing up emotionally, when your voice no longer trembles in pain, when your energy no longer belongs to her world, she feels it. She may not admit it, but deep down, she knows something valuable slipped through her hands. The same man she thought would never leave is now too far gone to reach. And that realization, that quiet awareness that she lost the man who once made her feel wanted, is what truly breaks her. In the end, it isn't revenge or bitterness that teaches her the lesson. It's your absence, your growth, your peace. Because nothing hurts a woman more than realizing the man she thought she could always keep is now the one she could never have again. The deepest wound for a woman who once took you for granted doesn't come when you walk away physically. It begins when you detach emotionally, when you stop reacting, when your words lose that desperate tone of trying to be understood, and when your eyes no longer carry that ache for her attention. That's when she starts to feel the shift. It's a quiet, invisible power that you gain the moment you stop trying to convince her of your worth. You no longer try to fix, explain, or chase. You stop needing her validation to feel seen. And in that calm distance, you become unpredictable again, no longer under her emotional control, no longer orbiting around her moods. The same silence she once used to control you now becomes the space where she starts losing her grip. First, she doesn't notice. She thinks you're just tired or distracted. She may even believe your silence is another tactic to gain her attention. But soon, she feels the difference between a man's pause and his peace. A pause expects reaction. Peace expects nothing. When your energy stops bending toward her emotions, she begins to feel something she hasn't in a while: uncertainty. The same woman who once felt power in ignoring you now feels powerless in your calmness. It confuses her because the emotional control she had is slipping away. Your detachment becomes the mirror reflecting her behavior back at her, and she begins to feel what you once did. The emptiness of being unseen. When a man emotionally detaches, he doesn't do it to hurt her, he does it to heal himself. It's not revenge, it's a quiet acceptance that no amount of effort can make someone value what they've already dismissed. And that acceptance creates a new strength, a kind of strength that doesn't need to prove anything. You start focusing on yourself, your goals, your peace. You no longer measure your day by her responses. You stop looking for signs of care because you finally realize that your energy deserves to be where it's respected. That realization makes you emotionally untouchable. She can try to provoke you, test you, or even return to the old patterns, but you've outgrown the game. And it's in that detachment that her pain begins. She sees you laughing again, focused, unbothered. The same man she once made doubt himself is now glowing without her presence. It hurts her ego because she realizes she no longer has access to the emotions she used to control. That calm distance burns deeper than any argument could because it shows her what she truly lost. Not just a man, but the emotional connection that once made her feel significant. In the end, it's not your anger that haunts her, nor your departure, it's your indifference. The quiet proof that she no longer holds the power she once had. And when a woman feels that emotional disconnection from the man who once cared deeply, that's when it finally hurts her the most. Nothing cuts deeper than watching the man she once ignored become everything she secretly wished for. When a woman no longer values you, she believes you'll stay the same, broken, waiting, hoping. She assumes her absence will keep you stuck in that emotional loop of trying to prove your worth. But what truly shakes her world is when you transform in silence. When you stop chasing and start building. When you stop needing and start growing. When you redirect every ounce of pain into purpose. That's when the tables turn without you even trying. She begins to see the version of you that her ego never allowed her to appreciate. And what hurts her most is knowing that this version no longer belongs to her world. At first, she might pretend not to care. She'll scroll past your progress, act indifferent toward your calm confidence, and convince herself it doesn't matter. But deep down, she notices the difference. Your posture, your focus, your peace. She sees that glow in your eyes that once dimmed because of her inconsistency. The man who used to wait for her messages now responds to his own ambitions. The man who once sought her approval now lives by his own validation. You no longer ask for her attention because your life has become too full to wait for what doesn't align anymore. And that realization begins to haunt her quietly. Growth is the one thing a woman can't compete with once she's lost her influence. She can mimic your confidence, but she can't recreate the version of you that was shaped through pain, patience, and evolution. Your growth becomes her regret. Not because she lost ownership over you, but because she finally sees what her pride made her ignore. She remembers the times you were gentle, the times you wanted to be seen, the times you fought to keep the connection alive. But now, you're not trying anymore. You've learned that love should never require you to beg for respect. And that understanding changes everything. It's ironic, the same woman who once thought she could do better now finds herself comparing every man she meets to you, not because you're perfect, but because you grew into everything she didn't believe you could become. You stopped explaining your potential and started proving it. Your success, your calm, your emotional stability, all of it becomes a quiet reminder of what she underestimated. She realizes too late that you are not replaceable, you are rare. And what hurts her most isn't your growth itself, it's that she's no longer a part of it. There comes a day when she'll look back and realize that the man she once dismissed was the one who truly cared, the one who would have built a future with her if only she had valued him. But by then, your story has already moved on, and your silence speaks louder than any closure ever could, because nothing hurts a woman more than seeing the man she ignored become the man she'll never have again. When a woman no longer values you, she expects you to react. She expects your frustration, your explanations, your attempts to make her understand what she's losing. She expects the same emotional energy you've always given, the constant effort, the endless conversations, the heart that refused to give up. But when you finally stop explaining yourself, everything changes. The silence that follows is not emptiness, it's power. It's the kind of peace that comes when you realize words no longer serve someone who only listens to feed her ego. When you stop trying to be understood and start accepting that she no longer deserves access to your emotions, you take away the very thing that gave her control, your attention. Silence is a language louder than anger. It speaks of dignity, self-respect, and awareness. It tells her that you have nothing left to prove. When you stop explaining, she starts to question. She wonders what made you so calm, what shifted inside you, and why her actions no longer affect you. At first, she mistakes it for pride, but as days pass and you remain unbothered, she begins to feel something she hasn't in a long time: uncertainty. The silence that once came from her to manipulate now comes from you to heal. You no longer chase answers because you've learned that peace is found not in confrontation, but in disconnection. You used to believe that love meant fighting for understanding, that if you could just explain your intentions, she would see your sincerity. But the truth is, some people don't want to understand, they just want to maintain control. And once you realize that, your silence becomes your shield. You stop feeding her ego with reactions. You no longer let her emotions dictate your peace. The power she once held over your mind fades, and in that stillness, you rediscover yourself. That's when your silence begins to echo in her world. She starts remembering the times you spoke with passion, the moments you cared too deeply, the messages filled with effort. Now, all she gets is calm distance. And that calm feels colder than anger ever could. Silence unsettles her because it reveals what words used to hide, that she no longer matters the way she once did. She'll replay your last words in her mind, wondering if there's still a way back. She'll test your reactions, waiting for a crack in your calm. But you've changed. You no longer explain, you no longer chase, you no longer respond to disrespect. You've reached a point where your silence speaks everything she refused to hear when you were loud about your love. And in that silence lies her realization, not the kind that comes suddenly, but the one that grows slowly, the awareness that your absence isn't a punishment, it's a boundary. Because nothing hurts a woman more than the silence of a man who once gave her everything and now refuses to explain anything at all. The moment you choose peace over drama, everything changes. The energy that once fueled arguments, explanations, and emotional battles now flows into your calmness. You stop engaging in cycles that drain you. You no longer feel the need to defend your intentions or prove your worth. That's when she starts to feel the void. The same woman who once felt powerful controlling your emotions begins to realize she has lost access to them. You're no longer emotionally available for her games, and that shift in energy is something she never saw coming. What hurts her isn't just your distance, it's that you've finally learned how to prioritize yourself. You begin to notice how silence feels lighter than chaos, how peace feels stronger than revenge. You start walking away, not with bitterness, but with understanding. You've outgrown the need to win her back because now your victory is your emotional stability. The man who once reacted to every word now responds to nothing that threatens his peace. And that transformation confuses her. She tries to provoke you, to pull you back into that emotional storm where she used to have control, but you don't move. You've learned that protecting your peace is more valuable than proving your point. You're no longer fighting for attention, you're fighting for inner balance. The more you invest in yourself, the more she feels the absence of your energy. She sees that your attention has shifted from her drama to your purpose. You start to glow in ways she can't understand. She watches as your focus turns toward your goals, your passions, your own happiness. The man who once waited on her messages now wakes up motivated by his mission. That's when she realizes that your peace wasn't weakness, it was power. She begins to understand that what once fed her ego now feeds your growth. You're no longer emotionally tied to her moods, and that independence is what truly breaks her. Peace becomes your statement. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's powerful. It tells her she no longer has the privilege to disturb your mind. Every time she reaches out expecting the old version of you, the one who would drop everything to respond, she meets a man who simply doesn't care to explain anymore. And that realization hurts more than any words could. Because peace, once found, cannot be traded for temporary validation. You've chosen yourself, and that decision silently destroys the illusion she once held of being irreplaceable. What she thought was indifference is actually evolution. You've learned that not everything deserves your energy, not everyone deserves your reaction, and not every battle is worth fighting. You've grown past the need to be understood by someone who never valued your effort, and as you stand firm in your calm, she finally begins to understand what she lost. Because nothing hurts a woman more than realizing the man she once controlled has found peace in a world where she no longer exists. But what hurts a woman the most is not your distance, your silence, or even your detachment. It's the realization that she lost someone who genuinely cared. When she looks back and remembers the times you were patient, the times you tried to understand her, the times you chose her, even when she made it hard to love her, that's when the regret begins to grow quietly inside her. At first, she won't admit it. She'll convince herself that you were just another man who cared too much, that you would eventually come back like you always did. But deep down, something in her knows that this time is different. Because now you're not leaving out of anger, you're leaving out of acceptance. You finally accepted that love without respect is an empty fight, and that caring for someone who doesn't value you is not loyalty, it's self-betrayal. In the beginning, she mistook your kindness for weakness. She thought your consistency was a guarantee. You loved her through her moods, her silence, and her distance, believing that one day she would see the sincerity behind your efforts. But the truth is, some people only see your value once you stop offering it. And when that moment comes, it hits hard. She starts to remember the small details. How you used to check in when she was quiet. How your voice softened when she was angry. How your words always carried reassurance instead of judgment. Those memories become reminders of what she pushed away while chasing the illusion of something better. And that's where the pain truly begins. When she realizes that no one else will love her with the same patience, the same purity, the same depth. The world will give her attention, but not the kind of connection you offered. She will meet people who compliment her, but none who understand her like you did. The late night conversations, the emotional safety, the feeling of being genuinely seen, all of it disappears. And when she finally understands the difference between being wanted and being valued, it's already too late. You've already become the man who learned how to love himself the way you once loved her. By the time she realizes what she's lost, you're no longer reachable in the same way. You've grown past the version of yourself that waited for her recognition. You've healed, evolved, and found peace in knowing your worth doesn't depend on someone else's ability to see it. She may try to return, seeking the warmth of what once was, but the door that was once wide open now stands quietly closed, not out of resentment, but out of wisdom. You've learned that not everyone deserves a second chance at your sincerity. And that truth burns her deeper than rejection ever could. Because in the end, it's not your absence that haunts her. It's the memory of how deeply you cared. Nothing hurts a woman more than realizing she lost the man who had never stopped loving her simply because she never learned how to value him when she had the chance.